Yo, welcome to TR Leads. I am Terrance Richmond, the TR in the Leads. And guess what, man? We're here, as we always are, to empower, activate, and equip. We got a special guest today. Goes by the name of Andrew Ao. Now, listen, this brother is one of the top, I would say, coaches, trainers, to me, influencers, funny guys. He's an amazing guy. That's why we have him on here today. How are you today, sir?
I am doing really well today, feeling super blessed, excited to have this conversation with you because I feel like there's a lot that we're going to be able to share and a lot of conversation we'll be able to direct.
Yeah.
And just like the purpose behind the podcast, I feel like it'll really equip,
empower, and activate. Activate. That's it.
And
activate, equip some more.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's just hop in real quick. I got a this or that icebreaker for you.
Okay.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Nike or Adidas?
Nike.
Home or travel?
Home now.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Vanilla.
Cardio or stretch?
Ooh, cardio.
Early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
Cake or pie?
Pie.
Hiking or swimming?
Hiking.
1-ply or 2-ply?
What's that?
The thickness of the toilet paper you use.
Oh, 2-ply for show.
Absolutely. Listen, man, how did you first get started in the fitness industry? Most people do not, know who you are. Many do know who you are. And we know the fitness industry as, when we think fitness, we think health. But there's a side to fitness that is not healthy. Maybe healthy to the body, but for sure not healthy to the soul. How did you get started in such a, I think, complex industry?
Yeah, so I mean, how I got started, it's funny because it's from our challenges that often give birth to direction and purpose.
Yeah.
And like you talk about in the industry, it might be healthy for the body, but it's unhealthy for the soul. And my soul was really unhealthy. Like, to put quick context for everybody, and not to go deep into the story yet, but I was under house arrest. I had nothing else to do. I could only go to school and work, but I was so lost because who I thought I was no longer who I wanted to be. And so I had to let the old man die, but I didn't know how to do that. And mind you, I wasn't rooted in the word and I wasn't rooted in faith at the time. But I mean, when God interceded in my life when I was young, he's always tethered and always guiding me and protecting me, and I didn't even know that. And somehow, some way, like, he just presented me this interest in fitness. So when I was lost and didn't know who I was at the moment, he was like, try this. And so, I was very selfish at the time, closed-minded. Anything like an egotistic person or egocentric person would be, that's who I was. And so I didn't want to commune with anybody. I was going through like this dark time and I thought I had to seclude myself.
Yeah.
And so in that time of seclusion, I found fitness.
Yeah.
And through fitness and developing my body, I didn't know that I was also developing my mind.
Yeah.
And then from the development of my mind, it led to developing my spirit. I started to smile more, be more joyful.
Yeah, you smile a lot.
Yeah, now I do.
Which is good.
To invite people into my life.
Yeah.
And, from that, people started to see the consistency of developing myself physically led to people asking and being curious about how you achieved that.
Yeah.
And then from that, I mean, it gave birth to a passion. And from that passion, people were curious and asked me, how did you do this and how did you develop this way? And so I shared that passion with people. But I was missing so much of it.
Yeah.
Because at the time, I didn't have the wisdom or insight to understand what was actually happening or conspiring within myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I just taught them the physical aspect. I just taught them, how to get bigger, how to get stronger, how to engage your muscle, how to develop this way so you can become this on a physical level.
Yeah.
But, God kept interceding in those moments. And, I was doing very well with my business before.
Yeah.
And fitness is just a passion. I never wanted to jump in to coaching at all. I thought to myself, I never want to use something that I love to share with others because I saw in the industry that most coaches and trainers lost passion for what they did.
Right.
They lost the desire to develop themselves and consistently grow. And so I was like watching that industry. I'm like, nah, never do I want to get into it.
Yeah.
I never want to coach people because it looks like it really sucks the spirit out of somebody.
Yeah.
And so the guy was like, no, man, that's not what I want you to do.
Yeah.
And so he interceded. And I was in the automotive industry before and had an automotive accessory shop.
Okay.
And so I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
I loved working on cars.
Did you rebuild cars? Were you like a mechanic and you just did oil changes, or what'd you do?
I like if somebody came in with I did automotive collision repair at first. So
Okay.
if somebody came in with a busted car, I'd be able to fix it.
Okay.
But then at the same time when I was doing that, I was working at Future Shop doing automotive accessory install. So anything 12 volt, custom systems, alarms, remote starters. And I loved it. Like,
And just so we could put it in context, a car is a body as well.
absolutely it is.
Right back home, the old school cars we fix up, put candy paint on it, rims, music. We call them muscle cars.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you've been working on bodies for a while.
For a while. But I didn't know that I was being prepared for something.
Yeah.
See, the thing is, when you're positioned in a place, I would highly encourage people to not look at where they want to be,
Yeah.
but to focus on where they're at.
Yeah.
And steward
Yeah.
where you're at.
Yeah.
Because from that, you're able to pull excellence out of yourself.
Absolutely.
And develop that characteristic of excellence.
Yeah.
And so wherever I was, for some reason, there was just this natural desire to be excellent at everything I did.
So you didn't necessarily set out to be a coach or any of that. You just kind of you were in a moment where you kind of grew a passion for something, redirected your career interests, and in that God began to move, change things in your heart, and now you're where you are. So you took this journey, and it is pretty cool how God does that. Like our interests do change, right? Now everyone's interests and desires, they fluctuate depending on the times, depending on relationships, depending on if you got hurt doing what you started off loving. But it's crazy though. It's crazy when you see the interests God takes in your desires. Like when you could try sports, you could try coaching, you could try being a food critic. You could find so many things to do, but it's a moment when God enters something you think you're trying.
Yeah.
And then it ends up being a lifetime. You know what I mean? And so from what I'm hearing you say is that you didn't want to be a coach. You didn't. When did it become God purpose or wanting to like, I can do this to the point where you're about to open your own gym, right? So you go from not wanting to be a coach to actually getting a facility.
Yeah.
So when did it, or how did it become something that you're like, nah, I'm made for this?
Yeah. So it was the moment where God first had to intercede, because like I said before, I had an automotive accessory shop and I loved it, but there was something still stirring in my spirit that was like, you're made for more than this.
Yeah.
And I was great at it. And I love to be able to offer something to somebody or create something where they look at something that was old and they get joy out of it.
Yeah.
It was the interaction with each person that I had that made me feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
And then, but still my spirit was stirring. And when it stirred, God is so faithful. When you ask good questions, he will always answer.
Yeah.
And you have to be available and ready for that answer.
Yeah.
And I asked, like, what else is there for me then if this is not it? And all of a sudden, one of my best friends shared with me this opportunity that he was doing, and it was door-to-door sales. And like I said before, I had a business. It was successful. And when the door-to-door sales came, he offered me the position. There was something very interesting about their culture because it was around personal growth and development, but it wasn't rooted in Christ, okay?
Yeah.
It wasn't rooted in the word, but it still intrigued me because it was a way to develop myself. And mind you, from that physical development, there was still a desire to develop more.
Yeah.
And then when I went into their culture and I learned about the human mind and how it works, and also about the brain and how it works, it led me to the idea, or the spiritual wisdom led me to the idea of incorporating the mind and the body together. Because often where the mind goes, the body will follow.
Yeah.
And then I was like, man, that's what's missing in the industry.
Yeah.
Now I can see and understand why all of these coaches who were coaching look like they were losing themselves.
Yeah.
Is because they didn't know how to coach people to overcome any self-limiting beliefs or ideas.
Yeah.
And so from that, it gave birth to a desire to interrupt the industry.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are always like, I'm a wellness coach, I'm a health and fitness coach, but they really are only equipping themselves in one dimension, which is just the body.
Yeah.
And then they start to grasp the idea, okay, it incorporates the mind, but how do we actually strategically execute that in a way where we can empower people to overcome their self-limiting beliefs and then better manifest or create what they're looking for externally?
Yeah, when all your clients is hitting a wall, you start burning out too.
Yeah, because you get frustrated.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it was that gave birth to the desire of not just being a coach or a fitness coach, but an excellent coach.
No, you for sure are. And that's what we do, man. We interrupt the industry, in whatever industry, and that's what I desire, man. I think great leaders raise up other leaders that interrupt any industry that they're in, right? If you're not raising up interrupters, you're not really doing the best job, because we're all meant to interrupt cycles and interrupt. We're all created to take it to the next level, right? And I see when I work with you, for some don't know, he's my trainer as well. And so I get to understand this firsthand. I'm not just interviewing you. I'm also talking about something that I'm witnessing, seeing the joy that you do it with. So when you're talking about trainers that's burnt out, and when I'm in the gym, I see other trainers around, I'm like, of course they love it. Like, you should love helping people, but there's this, like, it's just another client type thing. And when I see you work, you might be tired, but at the same time, there's such this long game with your clients that I see you work with. You're thinking about the long game. You're thinking about who their soul is, who they really are, versus trying to get their body to. So you could, when you see the soul in someone and you're trying to prosper their soul, even if you're not achieving some of the physical goals at the time, you start focusing on the other part of them. So many, I think, trainers focus on the body and not understanding they also need to coach the soul. They need to coach the spirit of man. And if you can help people get through that rut they're in spiritually, or that identity issue, and take the time to do it, it's super important. I got another question for you real quick. How important is it to build relational capital in order to have accountability capital? In other words, your client's strengths and weaknesses. So through relationship that you're building, again, back to me, I always see you, not just with me, but when I even stay around a little bit, I see you with clients or myself, where you'll tell me something to do, but you're observing how I do it. You're looking at my body language. You're studying people's energy, right? You're building relationship capital, so then you can have accountability capital, and you are able to hold people accountable based on that relationship and investment. How important is it for relational capital, if you're going to ever hold someone accountable, to then if you can't hold someone accountable, it's impossible to take them to the next level. And if they can't trust you or your accountability, then burnout or quitting or find another trainer, right? How important is relational capital to you?
Relational capital is so important. It's like building rapport with somebody. Building rapport is opening a line of communication where there's trust involved, where you're able to have a conversation. But it's also a very fine line, because oftentimes people think that building rapport as a coach and to be accountable for somebody is like building a friendship. But it's a fine line, because sometimes you can tip over into being too much of a friend, where you lose the ability to be accountable and to speak life over them, or to have word that carries weight over them. And you know that as a leader as well. So you have to be able to have that fine line and balance. But investing into people, letting them know that you're not just there for that 1 hour, but you're here to walk life with them.
Absolutely.
You're here to speak life into them, because, like the words of the wise speak health. They speak prosperity. They speak life over people. It's not that they're not recognizing the challenge that people go through, which is why building that relationship capital is so important, because you need to be able to understand and not just ask questions so that you can respond to what they're saying, but to ask questions so that you can really listen in on what's happening. Because like you said, I mean, you're observing more. People's body language is like 60% of communication. Tonality, inflections is like 20% of communication. And what the words that people use is only like 10 to 15%.
Absolutely.
So you really got to...
They don't mean crap. Anyway, keep going. Keep going. My bad.
Yeah, no worries.
Just a little praise break.
Yeah. So you really have to... So you really have to be observing. Right? You have to observe the relationships that you create and the capital of the relationship that you create, so that you can be accountable and speak into their lives and still carry the weight. Because sometimes we get really confused as coaches, and that's why it's so important to equip people, right? To understand that there's more to coaching than just being able to understand the physical body and to speak words, right? You have to understand that you have to observe always, and you have to learn how to hold people accountable and call them out. You got to call people out. You know, like sometimes I'll call you out too. Like, I'm like, come on, Pastor T, let's go. Lean into the word, lean into Jesus.
Absolutely. And you say it with so much I know you just want to be like, come on, man. I'm just like the other day I was, tired, and I feel it sometimes, and I appreciate it. And I never want to put people in a position as they're leading me as their leader that they can't lead, me. I could tell when you're, even in coaching me, sometimes there's moments like we'll pause in between sets and talk. And then there's moments where it's like, all right, let's do it. You get serious coach. And I'm like, man, I appreciate it. That's why I'm with you. I need that. Really quick, something's just popping up in my head. Just answer this to the best of your ability. What's the difference between a client and a soul?
Woo! Yeah, so this is a good one. This is a really good one. And the one thing that I'm getting is that it's looking at people before profit.
Yeah, come on.
See, a lot of people, they always look at their clients as like, this is the person I'm going to see in that hour. And when they look at that hour, they look at the dollar sign. But when you look at the soul of somebody, you look at what's really happening. Like when you have the eyes to see, and when you're first assessing a client, or even when clients are sharing you what's going on in their day, I mean, like you can really see their soul and what they're crying out for. And oftentimes, whenever we do an assessment with somebody new, we ask them, okay, what would it mean to you if you're able to achieve your goal? And they would give this a surface level understanding, but I'd ask them questions to dig into the deeper structure. What would it really mean to you then? And oftentimes they're like, if I were able to, achieve this, then it would mean that, I would have the confidence to be a man in my household. Right. And so there's some deep rooted soul hurt in there. And so that's why our mission at Alive Fitness and Wellness is use the body to bring us back to spirit. And I know over at LoveQuest, it's
use the body to bring it back to the spirit.
Absolutely.
That's really good.
Because we're always outward looking.
Absolutely.
But if you look without, you will always be without. But if you look within, you'll never be without. And oftentimes we're looking in the world and things of this world to bring us something internally that only the word can provide.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We need more people in the field like you, and that's what we're doing. How important is agility to, or shall I say, how important is breath support? Like, so people don't know this part as well. Like, you're super into breathing, and obviously there's experts out there that specialize in breathing, but that's a part of something that you offer with your ever-increasing knowledge on breathing. And obviously it's very important to fitness when you're lifting heavy weight, when you're trying to endure. Again, this whole physical thing super correlates to the spirit and the soul and surviving and endurance in life. It's not just endurance in a game, it's also endurance in a storm, right? How important is breathing and breath support to remaining agile through tough times in life? Now, if you want to correspond, I know you could talk all day about that, but if you want to kind of correlate that between, fitness and just like life.
I mean, like you can survive without water for days. You can survive without food for days, but the one thing you can't survive for too long without is your breath.
Yeah.
And breathing is essential to life itself. It does support your physical training as well. I mean, proper diaphragmatic breathing helps stabilize your core, allows you to sustain heavy load. But breathing also helps you sustain heavy load of life. It helps you endure storms. Why? Because, you know, today in our culture and society, I mean, we've glorified for some reason being busy.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get busy being busy, but it doesn't mean that we're progressing.
Absolutely.
And then when we get busy being busy, we often lead these lives that are led by anxiety, by stress, by fear. And how we interrupt those patterns, how the mind works, is through your breath. And how that works is that your breathing is your brain's indication for what type of an environment it is in, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes we're chest breathers, like most people are. We're like, and we're inducing this breath and following this pattern. But if you begin to monitor and look at people who often breathe into their chest, it's because they're either panicking, they're anxious, or they're stressed.
So that's what you're signaling to your body. You're under stress.
Exactly.
Yeah. Even if you're just having fun eating a sandwich, but your body is like, what's going on?
Yeah. So, I mean, the reason why we teach breath so much is because it's not only the key to your physical fitness, but it is a key to your health. And if you define health as being free of any injury, illness, or disease, that is the state, then we need to focus on that. How can we better empower people, equip people, so that when they're not with us, their health is still growing and developing. And not even just their physical health, but their mental health and their spiritual health. And because when you look at the breath, I mean, if you understand the brain and the shifts in the states that are in, there's the fight or flight that everybody knows about, and then there's the rest, heal, and restore state. And the fight or flight is known as the sympathetic state of the brain. And then the rest restore is known as the parasympathetic state. And you know, there's a use for the sympathetic state, because in our primitive days, like when we were running around hunting and gathering, if ever like a threat came, our sympathetic state will fire off. It will be alert. All of our metabolic energy will go to our external extremities so that we can either fight or flight, one of the two. But what happens is that if we get stuck in this, then we get in a chronic state of fight or flight. And that's what leads to the complications that we're not aware of. That's what can lead to the complication of illness, disease. Why? Because you're releasing so much cortisol in the body. Your body's becoming very acidic. And then also what happens is that it compromises your immune system. Why does it do that? It's because your body in its mind is thinking it's not time to rest, heal, and recover. It's not time to restore the body, right? So it's not giving any energy to your endocrine system, which is the autonomic nervous system that controls your body and all the millions of processes that it's doing. Like our body is so beautifully designed.
Absolutely.
So beautifully designed. So why not take care of it? This is the vessel, right? For the rest of our lives. So from understanding how important the breath is and how the breathing can interrupt the pattern and allow us to go into our parasympathetic state, which you've experienced many times. And you come out feeling restored. You come out feeling so rested. You don't feel anxious. You're interrupting that. You don't feel stressed. You don't feel fearful. And obviously, there's still some of those things that may linger or be there.
Absolutely.
But that's where the spiritual health comes in.
Yeah.
That's where the praise, the worship comes in. That's where the word comes in. Like, I have done many different modalities of healing. Like I've done meditations. I'm a certified master practitioner in NLP, so I understand how the brain works. And I can reprogram my brain to think a certain way and to overcome things and to visualize things so that my brain can see, hear, and feel those experiences. Because once again, your brain does not know the difference between reality and a perceived reality. So when you're living through the same trauma over and over and over again, your body still thinks you're stuck in that trauma. That's why you act out those same patterns. And once again, how do you interrupt that? Your breath. And so,
and especially when you give breath to it, meaning life and death is in the power of the tongue. So you may be, it's kind of like certain music. It's like, man, you're a millionaire now. You don't even live in the hood, but you're still making music about the hood. And so as long as I'm giving breath to where I used to be, I'm making where I used to be still a part of my reality today. Right?
That's some bars right there.
Yeah, I know. I was just thinking about that. Somebody go and write that down.
Go write that down, somebody. That was good though.
Absolutely. So You got me over here breathing while you talking. I'm over here like,
You're like,
yeah. And it's funny when microphones pick up in movies, like it's like somebody running, and you can hear panic in a pattern of breathing, right? You can hear it, and I do believe, man, our being, we cannot be whole without all three parts running together. There's no wholeness if, I'm rich but I'm anxious, right? And then if my mind is constantly, how many hours a day does my body read that I'm under stress? And not even, because I could be in the house all day long.
Yep.
But if my mind is like tense all day, and I don't even take 5 minutes to have concentrated breathing. And I think that's the beautiful thing about having to concentrate on breathing. I think you call it cognitive
Conscious
or
connected breath.
connected breath. It's like to actually pause and intentionally say, you're good. Calm down, relax, listen to that. Right. And actually take that, just even 5 minutes interrupts that pattern of anxiousness. Right. And I think that is so important. That's biblical. Meditate day and night, but on the word, right? Meditate on life, meditate on goodness, meditate on grace, meditate on the blessing, meditate on, meditate on health, meditate. And I think, and I won't get into it now because it's a greater conversation. Maybe we have to have a part 2, but how we have demonized certain practices that are rooted in breathing and exercise, right? And I get it. There are some demonic, but there's things about the church that's demonic, right? Everything has a demonic side. And so we can't be so holy that we have allowed the enemy to snatch something that God gave us to bring prosperity to our souls and into our bodies. But it is our job to steward what he gave us. And in all that has been lost and perverted, how do we redeem it and get it back to put it in its rightful place, right? Meditation was in the garden, I believe. Stretching was in the garden. I believe that
breath was even in the garden.
Absolutely. Well,
Genesis
it
2:7.
all started with breath. And so I think that's something that it's not only a lost art, but I think it's also a lost necessity of life. It's essential. We only got a few more minutes, but what is a key element to developing a mindset of greatness? How do you think that can be changed or developed? You mentioned a little bit how you can change, the neuroplasticity of your mind to, the Bible again, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. What are just a few key elements that we should probably develop on mindset if we want to be great?
I think one of the ones, we all have this desire within us. I do believe that. We all have this innate feeling inside of us that we're meant to do great things. And I think where most people fall short is being able to steward and be faithful to what's in front of them, because from that, you'll develop excellence. And once you'll have that characteristic and that mentality of excellence, that's where you can build a larger framework upon. Because now you're not going to just do things average. You're not just going to get by just doing what is required.
Yeah.
There's a saying, in order to be great, you must do more than what is required of you, is what is required of you in order for you to reach excellence.
Yeah.
And so that is one where I really stand firm upon. That's why you'll see me be faithful to all, and don't be afraid to serve. You said it best last time, some of the greatest shepherds smell like sheep.
Yeah.
And that's because some of the greatest leaders are the greatest followers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people always think that, I can do it on my own and I can recreate it. But, why reinvent the wheel? Why not take the wheel and then build upon it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you might have to dismantle it to create something new,
Yeah.
but there's a framework and a structure there already. So be mentored.
Absolutely.
Right? So
Absolutely.
to be clear, be faithful and steward what you have to develop excellence.
Yeah.
be a follower.
Yeah.
Like a lot of leaders won't say that, but I will say that openly. Be a follower. And I don't mean just blindly follow somebody. I heard the number one rule of success is who do you listen to? And you always want to listen to somebody who's been where you are and has what you desire. Not on a worldly scale, but like, look at how they live their life.
Yeah.
Like I'm a huge observer. So I watch people. I witness how they live their life. I witness how they interact with their family, their kids. I'm speaking about you specifically right now. I don't know if you know that.
It's all good. Man.
How they interact with their team. And I witness that. And if I see consistency, integrity, honor in what they do, I allow them to speak into my life.
Yeah.
Because it's so important. If you're just letting anybody speak into your life, man,
it's dangerous.
It's dangerous.
Yeah, you got to have a lid on your garbage.
You
can
will be
for sure.
so confused. You'll be like, "Who am I?" Like,
yeah,
right.
Absolutely. So this mindset of greatness. You said a couple really good things. Number one is cultivating a spirit, a habit, and a life of excellence, and that's super key. That's foundational. That's fundamental, because that excellence it will create a platform for anything great. Excellence is it's attractive. It's very important. It brings order. It's integrity. It's detailed. And then you also said being faithful, being a servant. I people won't say that either. Like greatness is somehow like we all oftentimes equate greatness to the place we're going to end up. Like I'm not great until I become the best actor in the world or the best fitness coach in the world. No, you could be great right where you are. Just because more people know you, just because you have more money, you actually get paid for your greatness, right? You don't show up and now you're great because you're known, right? Fame is not greatness, because there's some people that's famous that suck at what they do. They're horrible artists. What are you talking about? You're not the greatest actor, but you got the opportunity. But there was something in their work ethic, there was something in their network, and there was something that they did to put themselves in the position to do what they're doing. And a lot of times it's the excellence. I hear professionals a lot of times, especially athletes, one of the things that they look at in players that have longevity is not the greatest athlete, it's not the highest jumper, they're great professionals. You don't have to worry about them in the club after a game. You don't have to worry about them womanizing. They're great professionals, and you need professionals in the locker room to deal with the non-professionals. So if you're going to have a team, you want all amazing professionals, and normally that's a championship organization, right? I don't want to just be a champ. I want to develop a championship organization.
Yeah, that's good.
Right? Because most people want to be a champ, but how many people have made an organization a championship organization? We know the Lakers because of the champions that were on their team. We know the Celtics. We know so many great organizations, and generations want to join. Like I think of these great colleges that continue to be great. It's because they developed a championship organization, a legacy, right? And you have to me, greatness is not you won a championship. It's that you actually help build a legacy of champions. That's greatness. And that's what Jesus did. We're sitting here, a part of a legacy of champions. And that's greatness to me. And so, I think I got one more, maybe two more. How does flexibility prevent injury in the body, and how does that apply to life? Being flexible in life, being flexible in your body, preventing injury, stretching, that kind of stuff.
That kind of stuff. There's a saying, those who are not flexible often break. Because under the pressure and load that takes you into different ranges, people will break.
Like this pandemic has done.
Yeah.
People that have not wanted to be flexible, they've fallen off.
Absolutely. And they're not willing to pivot during these times.
Yeah.
And there's a difference, though, I would like to highlight between flexibility and active mobility.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
A lot of the times people think that flexibility is what I need for my body to heal and for me to not feel pain or tension. But when you're bringing your body into different ranges and different end ranges, which is like huge flexibility, but you have no active control in there, when you load the body's tissue or the muscle under those end ranges, but it's not prepped for it, what will happen? Your body will compensate. And when it compensates, it creates dysfunctional patterns. And those dysfunctional patterns lead to developing more tension and injuries within the body. And so if you look at it that way, and if you look at, how you can apply that to life, when people go into these end ranges, when people go into these uncomfortable situations, which we're encouraged to go, but they're not equipped or covered, that's when they will overload themselves and then create these dysfunctional habits, ideas, or beliefs about what they're doing, and then will just say to themselves, it's not working. And then they will break and take a huge step back and be so afraid to take a step forward again. And that was good.
That was good. Look,
Thank you.
Listen, so a couple of things, and then then I'll get you this last question.
Okay.
Man, I know this from just playing basketball. We often talk about pivoting, but before you pivot, you actually have to plant. You got to understand that. You have to plant before you pivot. Or in basketball, even if you do not establish your pivot foot, you travel. It's a violation. And so if I'm going to pivot, or if I'm going to establish a pivot foot, which means the foot that I actually can move around, that foot can't slide, that foot can't move, but I can be mobile where I'm at. So I could do this, I could do that, I could do that, but I have to keep a pivot foot. But the pivot foot is only a pivot foot because it's planted. A pivot foot is not a pivot foot without it being planted. And we know about being planted. Second thought is this idea, this is a whole different conversation, but this idea of covering. Every seed is covered. You dig, you plant, you cover it.
With good soil.
You cannot grow without being covered. Right? You cannot die to yourself without being covered. It's safe to die to yourself once you're covered. And people that live so long just being independent and doing things for themselves have the toughest time surrendering to mentors and being accountable to other people. But until you can surrender to mentors or accountability, you can't die to yourself. And if you can't die to yourself, you cannot produce fruit beyond yourself. Last question. What is one thing that you believe defines greatness? One thing that you believe defines greatness. Just one.
Just one thing.
Just one.
Man, that's actually a question I've never asked myself.
Yeah, but because I was supposed to ask you.
I feel it's coming in as consistency.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too.
Okay. Yeah, because greatness cannot develop without consistency. Because a lot of people think that they have to always get ready before they start. But the thing is, most people, whenever they start anything, like even myself, know nothing. They're not even good in the beginning. And so the consistency of continually pursuing what you feel is your call or purpose will lead to greatness. And even though your consistency and direction may take a turn because God intercedes, you have to be available and ready for that. But still, your development of greatness will carry on in the new direction as well.
No, that's good. You don't have to be ready to develop. You were born ready, and you will naturally develop if you continue to step into the things that God has called you to step into. There's many things. Life does happen to us, but we do get to choose in what we get involved in. There's many opportunities to grow. All day there's an opportunity. There's a phone call to answer. There's a doorbell to answer. There is an appointment to go to. There is a tire to wake to. There is a TV show to allow to pervert you or grow you. There opportunity to grow. We do not have to look far to I guess find opportunities for development. I think one thing that we have to be very careful of is where do we invest our seed in order to develop. Our seed is time, it's money, it's our abilities. Every day you're investing those. And wherever you invest those, you're going to produce fruit in those. And if you never invest them, you're not going to develop. If you don't develop, you're not going to be great at anything. And you find people that they sow their time, treasures, and abilities in a bunch of stuff. And they all develop at a small rate.
Yeah.
And a slow pace because they're not giving their all in any one thing. And so, man, that was great. I appreciate you. We may do a part 2 because there's so much to talk about. Your eyes are still big. So
I'm ready. I'm still ready. I still got things.
Right. Anyways, thank you guys for joining us at TR Leads, where we equip, activate, and empower, or we empower, activate, and we equip. However you want to say it, your life will be better as you let us lead you as God leads us. Get your love fix, man.